Did you know that all the fossils in Canada are actually owned by the Queen of England? Did you also know that what I just said is completely false? Nowadays, it's hard to tell whether the news we receive is true or not. In fact, the problem with fake news, which means any incorrect content found online, in order to get more clicks and make money, and disinformation, which means politically motivated messaging intended to mislead the public. It can often combine true facts stripped out of context. It's getting so big that it might be threatening our democracies. But is this issue really that serious? I mean, hasn't fake news and politically driven media been around for centuries? Oh yeah, it's because of the internet. There are around 1 billion people who get their news from social media. And these social media companies, without realizing it, or perhaps even wanting to, have become the gatekeepers of the news. Their algorithms decide what news gets importance and what makes it to your news feed. But the problem is that these algorithms do not distinguish between fact or fiction, between credible news platforms and dubious hate groups, between your colleagues' wedding photos and the top news of the day. And these algorithms are designed in a way that you get to see content which is popular rather than credible. But again, how harmful can fake news really be? Is it really that serious? Well, to the people of Sri Lanka, a lot. Sri Lanka Mata. In Sri Lanka, a fake rumor started through Facebook that the minority Muslim Tamil community was trying to sterilize the Buddhist community by slipping drugs in food at restaurants. While this rumor was completely false, it led to riots in the city of Kandy. People were brutally beaten, Muslim shops and mosques were burned down, and things got so out of control that the government of Sri Lanka had to declare a state of emergency. Disinformation plays itself out differently in different regions, and not all the situations will be similar to what we saw in Sri Lanka. In the Philippines, the delegate media ecosystem has been turned upside down by what some observers are calling state-sponsored disinformation. The controversial president, Rodrigo Duterte, has been accused by some of saying statements which are just not true.
I lose 4, 5 soldiers and policemen every day. I'm losing on the average 6 to 8 soldier or policemen in Mindanao in drug-related cases.
His administration is known for boosting media voices that support him and delegitimizing the media voices that are critical of him by accusing them of fake news.
Since you are a fake news outlet, then I am not surprised that your articles are also fake.
Credible journalists can be discredited or in some cases even arrested by being accused of fake news, when in reality, all they are actually doing is just being critical of their governments. That is exactly what happened in Malaysia when a law against fake news was passed. The problem with these laws are they're trying to essentially regulate the internet. That is one power that no one person or one institution should have. And while in some cases disinformation is state-sponsored to subtly influence public opinion, in some cases it is being used to completely rearrange reality. In 2014, the Euromaidan revolution took place in Ukraine, which was a 93-day protest where the people demanded that their then president leave office after he went back on his word to sign a treaty with the European Union. And because of this, Ukraine was the target of a massive disinformation campaign led by Moscow, who supported that president in order to discredit the protesters and their right to actually have a say in how their government is run.
Seeing a level of medieval violence from the protesters. That is where the real violence in these protests is coming from.
In some ways, Ukraine is probably the first country who saw the full impact of disinformation, but it is not the only one.
126 million Americans were exposed to Russian-backed content during the election.
The entire American intelligence community released a public report agreeing that Russia meddled in the presidential election.
According to a report by Freedom House in 2017, the elections of 18 countries were impacted by disinformation. There is no one way of countering disinformation. There are institutions all over the world trying to deal with the different segments of the problem. This is Stop Fake, a Ukrainian organization designed to counter disinformation in Ukraine.
Russian and pro-Russian media have falsely reported that Ukrainian citizens will soon be trained to take part in Syria's civil war.
Sputnik incorrectly reported that the committee of the U.S. Senate had been informed that the U.S. was losing the media war to Russia.
While the work that Stop Fake does is extremely important, it can't be enough. According to research, despite genuine efforts to debunk fake news, the incorrect original content is still being shared at a higher rate than the corrections. So, is there a more long-term solution?
We at IREX believe that information literacy, which includes media literacy, it's a fantastic bet for the future of democracy and the future of good citizenship. Our attempt to address this issue has been an initiative called Learn to Discern, in which we trained in a targeted fashion 15,000 people to be able to critically consume information in a way that informs their decision-making in their day-to-day activity.
Journalists, academics, activists, people all over the world are sitting in rooms and trying to come up with solutions. But there is something that you can do. After all, the entire point of the news is to serve you. We have to realize that any one of us can be a victim of disinformation. So the next time you read something that makes you angry, scared, or anxious, read it again and see if it's actually backed up by factual evidence. And don't just believe something just because it goes in lines with your political beliefs. Challenge it. Look for its sources. We, as citizens of democratic countries, have a right to know what is actually happening in our country so that we can influence the direction it is to take. Because if we don't, someone else will. So for that reason, we have to care where our news is coming from. And as far as this video is concerned, here are all our sources. We encourage you to verify them.